I mean, it just remains itself.
You have to keep your head very still.
Yes. And you can't look down to read the speech. You have to take...
They say the crown jewels belong to the nation, but the most intimate pieces of the late Queen's personal collection are a different story. In the final, quiet days at Balmoral, Queen Elizabeth II made a series of private directives that shocked her inner circle. She didn't just organize her will, she placed a specific long-standing ban on a collection of legendary diamonds and heirlooms, ensuring they would never touch the skin of Queen Camilla. While the public saw a smooth transition of the monarchy, the truth behind the jewelry boxes tells a story of a deep-seated protectionism that stretched far beyond the grave. The Secret Amendment. The vault at the base of the Tower of London is a place of cold, hard history. It is where the most significant pieces of the British royal collection reside, but there is a secondary, far more private vault hidden beneath Buckingham Palace. This is where the late Queen Elizabeth II kept the items that were not for the public. A few months before she passed away in 2022, she held a private meeting with her chief archivist. She brought a single sealed document. It was a codicil to her personal estate plan. The archivist has never spoken of the document's contents. However, whispers from the household staff suggest it was far more than a simple list of bequests. It included a series of explicit restrictions on who could access specific pieces of the Queen's personal collection. These were not state-owned jewels. These were pieces that had been passed down from Queen Victoria, Queen Alexandra, and Queen Mary. They were the private legacy of the female line of the monarchy. The document reportedly included a clause that required a specific level of royal title before certain items could be released from the vault. It wasn't just about rank, it was about lineage. It effectively created a distinction between those born into the royal bloodline and those who married into it. This amendment acted as a gatekeeper, ensuring that the most historic diamonds and pearls would not be treated as mere loaner accessories for the consort. This was an unprecedented move. The late Queen was known for her meticulous attention to protocol, but this went beyond standard management. It was a final, strategic act of control. By formalizing these restrictions in a legal document, she ensured that her rules would persist long after she was gone. She was essentially reaching out from the grave to curate the visual identity of the monarchy. She decided which pieces could shine, and which were to remain in the dark. The staff at the palace noticed the change almost immediately. The velvet-lined cases that held the most iconic tiaras and necklaces were moved to a more secure, restricted section of the vault. New handwritten labels were attached to the exterior of the boxes. Some of them were marked with a code that indicated they were reserved for the sovereign bloodline. Others were simply labeled private estate. It was clear that these were no longer part of the general pool of royal jewels. This change put the current administration in an impossible position. They are the ones who have to explain why certain pieces are never worn. They are the ones who have to handle the awkward requests from the Queen's team for access to specific heirlooms. Every time they are forced to say no, they are acting on the direct orders of the woman who is no longer there. It is a silent standoff that defines the atmosphere behind the scenes. The mystery is why she felt the need to be so specific. Was it a final, protective measure to safeguard the history of the Windsor line? Or was it a deliberate, calculated snub? The Queen was a master of using her clothing and jewelry as a language. She knew exactly what it meant to wear a certain brooch, or a specific pair of earrings. She knew that by restricting these items, she was making a final statement about the hierarchy of the family. The crown jewels may be the property of the state, but these personal pieces were her own. She treated them as an extension of her own power. By locking them away, she kept a piece of that power for herself. She ensured that the sparkle of the monarchy would be defined by her own terms, not by the person who happened to hold the title of Queen Consort. She created a legacy in lockdown, and for now, the vault door remains firmly closed. The "not for the consort" label, the categorization of the late Queen's private jewelry, was a task she handled with the precision of a military operation. In the final year of her life, she personally oversaw the cataloging of pieces that had not seen daylight in decades. She did not use a computerized system. She worked with a small, trusted team of archivists using ledger books that dated back to the reign of her grandfather. When they reached specific parures of sapphires and emeralds, she made her intentions clear. She instructed them to distinguish between sovereign property and private family legacy. The distinction was crucial. items labeled as sovereign property were effectively assets of the crown, meant to be used by whoever held the position of monarch or queen at the time. However, the items tagged as private family legacy were a different matter entirely. These were pieces that carried the personal history of the Windsor bloodline. According to those familiar with the process, the late queen personally affixed tags to the velvet cases of these specific items. Several were marked with a discreet notation, "Not for the consort." This was not a vague suggestion. It was a formal categorization. The queen was effectively creating a two-tiered system for the jewelry vault. There were the pieces that were meant to be worn for state functions, and then there were the pieces that were meant to represent the continuity of the direct royal descent. By marking them this way, she ensured that the jewels would not be treated as generic accessories for whoever happened to be married to the king. She was protecting them for the future sovereigns. The palace staff discovered the implications of these labels during the lead-up to the first state banquet of the new reign. The team at Clarence House had submitted a request to borrow a specific set of 19th century diamond brooches for the queen. The request was denied by the keeper of the privy purse. The reason cited was simply that the items were restricted under the terms of the private estate. It was a direct application of the labels the late queen had mandated. It left the queen's team with no room for argument. This restriction creates a visible contrast during official events. You can see it in the way the royals dress. When the Princess of Wales appears at a state dinner, she is frequently seen in pieces that carry immense historical weight. She wears the tiaras and the necklaces that have been identified as the core of the Windsor legacy. Meanwhile, the queen is often seen in pieces that are either new or from her own personal collection prior to her marriage. The visual gap is intentional. It reinforces the hierarchy. The mystery is how this will be handled in the coming years. Will the current king eventually override his mother's instructions? He has the authority to change the rules of his own estate, but he would be going against the explicit documented wishes of the woman who held the throne for 70 years. To do so would be a major break in protocol. It would signal a departure from the traditions that the late queen spent her final days codifying. For now, the items remain where they were placed. The vault continues to be managed by a team that follows the consort restriction, as if it were a matter of national security. Every diamond and pearl in that restricted section is a testament to the late queen's desire to control the narrative of the monarchy long after she was gone. She made sure that the brightest stars of her collection would be saved for the next generation of bloodline monarchs. Camilla, despite her title, remains outside the circle of that legacy. The forbidden tiaras. The most visible symbols of this restriction are the tiaras. For over 7 decades, Queen Elizabeth II was the sole curator of these headpieces. She understood that a tiara was never just a fashion statement. It was a crown in miniature. It was a signal of status, lineage, and authority. In her final years, she identified a small group of tiaras that were to be removed from the active rotation. They were effectively mothballed. They were taken from their usual display cases and placed into permanent storage in the deep vault. These aren't just any pieces. One of them is the Russian fringe tiara, famously worn by the Queen on her own wedding day. It is a piece with deep historical significance, tied to the Romanov legacy and the British royal line. Another is the diamond bandeau, which carries delicate, intricate work that has been part of the family's collection since the early 20th century. These are items that require significant maintenance and care, yet they are now kept in conditions that prevent them from being worn. The palace staff who manage the jewels are very careful about how they talk about these items. If asked, they simply say that the pieces are undergoing long-term restoration, or that they are being kept in a controlled environment to ensure their longevity. But the reality is that the restoration process has been finished for years. The pieces are ready to be worn. They are simply not being released to the current Queen's office. They remain under lock and key, reserved for a future that does not include the present consort. This has caused a quiet, persistent tension. When Camilla's team requests a tiara for a major state event, they are often steered toward the same handful of pieces. They are given the Greville tiara or the Kokoshnik tiara. These are beautiful, historic, and impressive, but they do not have the same personal resonance as the pieces locked in the restricted vault. The staff knows that the Queen is aware of this. She knows that there are other options, and she knows that she is being denied access to them. The mystery is whether these pieces will ever be seen again. The late Queen's instructions were very clear. They were to remain in the private estate, and their access was to be limited to the bloodline royals. This means that, according to the letter of the Queen's final directive, they cannot be worn by the current Queen consort. They can only be released when the next generation of royals ascends to the throne. It is a time capsule that will remain sealed for years to come. This restriction is a powerful way to define the legacy of the monarchy. By choosing to lock away these specific pieces, the late Queen was making a statement about who she believed should represent the crown in the future. She was ensuring that the most iconic headpieces would be reserved for the moment when the direct line of succession returns to the throne. She was essentially betting on the long-term continuity of her family, rather than the temporary nature of the consort role. The Princess of Wales, in contrast, has a different relationship with the vault. She has been seen in pieces that were long thought to be retired. Her ability to access these heirlooms, while the Queen cannot, is a detail that has not gone unnoticed by the royal observers. It creates a visual hierarchy. It shows the public that the future of the monarchy is being groomed and prepared in a way that is distinctly separate from the current transitional period. The forbidden tiaras are not just jewels. They are silent markers of a future that the Queen was determined to protect. The vault's iron gate. The office of the Keeper of the Privy Purse is not a place for idle chat. It is a room filled with heavy mahogany furniture, thick carpets, and the hum of high-end security systems. The current keeper, James Chalmers, occupies this role with a seriousness that reflects the weight of his responsibilities. He is not just an accountant, he is the guardian of the sovereign's private estate. When a request for jewelry comes in from the Queen's office, it lands on his desk. He does not decide based on taste. He decides based on the mandate left by the late Queen. The process of requesting a jewel is a formal dance. It begins weeks before a state banquet. The Queen's personal dresser submits a list of potential pieces. This list is forwarded to the Keeper's office. If the request includes items from the private family legacy vault, the denial is almost immediate. It is not personal. The staff in the Keeper's office simply point to the codicil. They state that the items are restricted under the terms of the private estate. This creates a recurring friction. The Queen's team often pushes back. They argue that the pieces are needed to project the dignity of the monarchy on the international stage. They point out that a state visit requires the most impressive jewels available. The Keeper's office does not waver. They have become the silent enforcer of a rule that was set in stone years ago. It has led to a strained, cold relationship between the household offices. There is a strange, quiet standoff that occurs when the Queen and the Princess of Wales are both preparing for the same event. If the Princess of Wales is granted access to a piece that the Queen was denied, the silence in the hallways is deafening. The Queen's staff knows exactly what is happening. They see the jewel on the princess. They know it was retrieved from the restricted section of the vault. They know the Keeper's office signed off on it. The mystery is how the Princess of Wales manages to secure these loans. Does she have a direct line to the Keeper? Or is the Keeper acting on instructions from the King himself? Some insiders suggest that the King is actively encouraging this distinction. He wants the public to see the continuity of the monarchy and the princess. He is not standing in the way of the late Queen's wishes. He is using them to signal the transition to the next generation. The staff at the palace have learned to stop asking questions. They know the rules. They know that the vault is no longer a shared resource. It is a strictly partitioned archive. The jewels are no longer just tokens of office. They have become symbols of the power struggle between the current consort and the future of the bloodline. Every time a piece of jewelry is released, it sends a signal to the entire household. This has changed the daily routine of the royal dressers. They no longer plan the Queen's outfits with the same freedom they once had. They have to work around the restrictions. They have to find alternatives that don't trigger the Keeper's denial. It is a constant game of strategy. They are always trying to figure out what might be acceptable and what is forbidden. It turns every public appearance into a negotiation. The vault remains the ultimate authority in the palace. No one, not even the King's wife, can bypass the labels the late Queen created. The Iron Gate of the vault is a physical manifestation of the late monarch's final, silent decree. She set the terms of her own legacy, and she ensured that no one could change them. For now, the Keeper of the Privy Purse holds the key, and he is not about to hand it over. The burden of the bloodline. The history of the Windsor jewels is written in blood, marriage, and long-standing tradition. Most of these pieces did not start in the family. They were acquired through royal connections across Europe over the last 2 centuries. Queen Mary, the grandmother of Elizabeth II, was the one who built the core of the collection. She had an eye for historic significance. She knew that these diamonds were not just wealth. They were the physical evidence of the crown's endurance. The late queen viewed herself as a temporary caretaker of this legacy. She often said that she did not own the jewels, but rather held them in trust for her descendants. This philosophy was at the heart of her final decisions. She believed that the most significant pieces needed to stay within the direct line of descent. She was deeply concerned about the dilution of the royal legacy through non-bloodline marriages. She wanted to ensure that the icons of her reign remained anchored to her own children and grandchildren. This obsession with the bloodline was not new. It was a theme that ran through her entire 70-year reign. She kept a close watch on who wore what and when. She would often personally select the jewelry for her daughters and daughters-in-law for state events. She wanted to project a specific image of the family. She knew that every necklace and brooch told a story. She was the author of that story, and she wanted to keep control of the narrative until the very end. The restriction she placed on the private estate was a way to extend that control indefinitely. She didn't trust that the future of the monarchy would be as careful as she was. She worried that the pieces might be sold, misplaced, or simply undervalued in the hands of people who were not part of the direct lineage. By legally binding these items to the bloodline successors, she created a shield around the collection. She made it impossible for anyone to move the pieces outside of her preferred circle. This raises the question of how the current king feels about his mother's final act. He was part of the meetings where these decisions were made. He saw the labels being attached to the cases. He watched the archivists move the items to the restricted section. He has not made a single move to change these rules. It seems he agrees with her assessment. He views the bloodline as the most important element of the monarchy. He is protecting his mother's vision because it aligns with his own view of the crown's future. The mystery is how this affects the family dynamic behind closed doors. Camilla is the queen. She is his partner. Yet, she is effectively barred from the most important symbols of the office she holds. Does this cause conflict at dinner? Do they speak about it at all? The lack of public information suggests that it is a subject they avoid. They treat the vault as a closed chapter. They respect the late queen's final directive as if it were a law of nature. The Princess of Wales, on the other hand, is increasingly seen as the true heir to this legacy. She is the one who wears the pieces that the late queen kept for her bloodline. She is the one who carries the weight of the family history in her choice of accessories. The visual language of the royal family is being shifted toward her. She is being positioned not just as the wife of the future king, but as the true custodian of the Windsor traditions. This is a heavy burden for her to carry. She is being asked to live up to the standard that the late queen set, while Camilla is pushed to the side. Every time the princess wears an heirloom, it reminds the world that she is the chosen one. She is the face of the future. The late queen knew exactly what she was doing when she locked those gates. She was choosing her successor, and she was doing it with diamonds and gold. She was ensuring that the bloodline would always be the center of the story. A legacy in lockdown. The vault beneath Buckingham Palace is silent, save for the hum of the climate control systems that keep the humidity at exactly 50%. Row upon row of velvet trays hold the history of the House of Windsor. There are diamonds that have traveled from the mines of Africa to the courts of Europe, and pearls that have been worn by 6 generations of queens. But the most precious items are now tucked into the deepest, most secure corner of the archive. These pieces are not just jewels, they are the physical manifestation of the late queen's final, silent decree. The staff at the palace rarely speak of what is inside that locked section. When they do, it is in hushed tones, as if discussing a state secret. They know that the late queen's final instructions are absolute. She didn't just organize her estate, she curated a vision of the future. She ensured that the most iconic pieces of her personal collection would remain out of reach, waiting for a time when the crown would rest on the head of a direct bloodline heir. It is a lockdown that serves a singular purpose: the protection of the Windsor lineage. This legacy remains in a state of suspended animation. The tiaras sit in their cases, polished and ready, but they do not see the light of state banquets or royal receptions. They are waiting. The keeper of the privy purse acts as the gatekeeper, ensuring that the rules are followed to the letter. He knows that he is not just managing assets. He is upholding the will of a monarch who ruled for 70 years. He is the guardian of the vault's iron gate, and he will not be the one to break the seal. The queen remains in a position that is both powerful and restricted. She holds the title, she performs the duties, and she commands the respect of the nation. Yet, every time she is denied a specific piece of jewelry, she is reminded of the boundaries that were set before her reign even began. She is the queen consort, but she is not the custodian of the history that the late queen kept for the bloodline. It is a nuance of royal power that is rarely discussed in the press, but it is felt in every detail of the palace's daily operations. The Princess of Wales, meanwhile, is being prepared for a future that is still years away. Her access to the vaults is not a matter of luck or timing. It is a strategic deployment of resources. By allowing her to wear the pieces that are inextricably linked to the crown's continuity, the palace is making a statement about where the true future of the institution lies. She is being aligned with the history of the family in a way that is distinctly separate from the current transitional phase. This mystery, who will finally unlock the vault, is one that will play out over the coming decades. When the next monarch eventually takes the throne, the rules may change. The directives of the late queen may be reinterpreted, or they may be followed even more strictly. The jewels will eventually see the light of day again, but they will do so on the terms that were established in the final, quiet days of the previous reign. The late queen understood that power is not just about what you wear, it is about who you choose to wear it in the future. We are left with a monarchy that is navigating its own transition through the lens of its most precious assets. The vault is not just a storage space, it is a map of the royal family's priorities. It tells a story of a woman who wanted to ensure that her life's work would serve the purpose she intended. The jewels are locked away, but their silence is the loudest message of all. They are the guardians of a legacy that waits, patiently, for the next chapter to begin. The Queen's final command was more than just a matter of diamonds and gold. It was a final, calculated assertion of who truly belongs at the heart of the Windsor legacy. By locking away her most personal treasures, she ensured that the visual identity of the monarchy would skip over the current generation. Is this a necessary preservation of history, or a lingering sting for the woman who became queen? We want to hear your take on this sparkling royal mystery. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to ensure you don't miss the next deep dive into the palace vaults. The princess's hidden access. The scene in the dressing room at Kensington Palace is frantic. 3 assistants are hunched over a heavy, velvet-lined case. It is 3 days before the state banquet. They aren't looking at the standard catalog of loaner pieces. They are opening a box that has been sealed with a wax stamp. Inside sits the Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara. It is a piece that many assumed was tucked away in the deep storage of the private vault. Yet, here it is, sitting on a vanity table in London. This access is the ultimate indicator of the new internal policy. While other members of the family are directed to the general inventory, the Princess of Wales has been granted a special, direct line to the private collection. It is not just about convenience, it is about a deliberate elevation. The office of the king has authorized this bypass of the standard protocol. They are allowing her to pull from the very collection that the late queen was so protective of. The logistics of this are managed with extreme secrecy. The pieces are transported in unmarked vehicles. They are accompanied by 2 security officers at all times. They do not appear in the standard digital tracking system used by the general royal household. The princess's team logs the items manually. They want to avoid any paper trail that could lead back to the keeper of the privy purse. They are operating in their own private bubble of influence. This creates a sharp divide in the family's visual branding. Look at the photos from the last 2 major state occasions. The queen is elegantly dressed, but her jewelry is noticeably understated. She wears pieces that are safe, reliable, and essentially neutral. Then, look at the Princess of Wales. She is adorned in the heavy, history-laden diamonds that define the previous reign. She looks like the continuity. She looks like the weight of the crown is already on her head. The mystery is how this sits with the rest of the family. The royal cousins and the wider household are aware of this special access. They know that the rules have changed, even if they aren't written down in any official handbook. It creates a subtle tension in the palace hallways. People treat the princess differently when they see her wearing these restricted heirlooms. They know she has the full private blessing of the king. It is a risky move for the monarchy. By prioritizing the princess's look so heavily, they are highlighting the gap between her and the current queen. They are making it impossible for the public to ignore that the future is being favored over the present. They are effectively using the late Queen's own jewelry as a political tool. They are signaling to the world exactly who they see as the true successor to the late monarch's legacy. There is no formal announcement, of course. These things are never discussed in press releases. They happen in the quiet moments of preparation, behind locked doors, and away from the cameras. The princess simply appears, and the jewelry speaks for itself. It is a silent, sparkling endorsement from the highest levels of the palace. The vault is no longer a shared resource. It has become a staging ground for the next chapter of the House of Windsor. The staff at the palace realizes that the rules of the vault have effectively been rewritten. The codicil left by the late Queen was meant to protect the line of succession. Now it is being used to define it. The princess is being treated as the true custodian of that history. She is the one who bears the sparkle of the past into the public eye. The restrictions on the consort remain firmly in place for everyone else, but the Princess of Wales is exempt. She is already wearing the future. The deeper we look into the vaults of Buckingham Palace, the clearer the reality becomes. The transition of power is not just happening in boardrooms or meeting schedules. It is being written in diamonds and gold. By selectively granting access to the late Queen's most iconic heirlooms, the palace is meticulously curating a visual history that skips over the present and reaches directly into the future. The Princess of Wales isn't just wearing these pieces, she is wearing the authority and the mandate of the direct bloodline, while others are left to navigate a sea of restrictions. It is a masterful, silent strategy that shapes public perception without a single word being spoken. But does this prioritization of the bloodline legacy come at the cost of the unity the king promised? Or is it simply the only way to ensure the monarchy survives the changing tides? We are witnessing a quiet, sparkling revolution within the royal household, and the vault doors are only just beginning to crack open. What do you think of this calculated distribution of royal jewels? Does the Princess of Wales's exclusive access change your view on who truly leads the House of Windsor? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the secrets behind the palace walls.